Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast here on a beautiful Sunday. And we're 2 days away from NFL free agency. So I thought get him back on the podcast, a frequent guest during the NFL season. And it's good to have him back on today to talk about some of the free agents and some of the movement already in this wacky NFL offseason. But Adam Beers, thanks for coming back on and for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Noah. Looking forward to having a chat today. A lot of news in the league.
Yeah, I mean the NFL never goes away. That's the one sport, whether it's the draft, free agency, it's got more hype than any other sport, and I think they do a better job at marketing it than any other sport, in my opinion. But obviously, your team really got the ball rolling. The Detroit Lions, them and their quarterback Matthew Stafford, mutually agreed that they should go their separate ways. And now we got Stafford traded to the Los Angeles Rams. In return, Jared Goff is now the quarterback for the Lions as of now. So haven't had you on since the trade. What are your thoughts on the trade? And obviously with your guy Stafford moving on to bigger and better things.
Well, initially I was a little bit shocked when I heard the news, disappointed. I've been a Lions fan for a while, and Stafford's been there ever since, seems like forever. But he's the kind of guy for me, it's like, I give him a shot to win, give him a chance. I think the Rams and McVay, they will have a good possible chance to win in that division. So I was happy for him in terms, oh, shoot. Sorry, got a phone call. Well, I should turn my ringer off. So yeah, I was upset to see him go. In terms of the deal for me, I think they did really well. Actually, I was really impressed. It's that second first that really, kind of sealed the deal for me. And from what I was hearing, there was a lot of firsts offered for Stafford, but that second first was the key. And then Goff, well, I mean, where do we start with Goff? To me, he's patchwork. He's a holdover. He's a viable quarterback. Terrible contract, probably one of the worst in football, and he's not the future. I'm not going out and buying a Goff jersey tomorrow. I can tell you that. I was thinking about a Golladay, but I guess that's off the table too.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Goff and Stafford deal? Where do you stand?
Yeah, I understand the Lions' inquisition that they want to get a quarterback back in the deal, which I agree with. Somewhat. I think you could not get a quarterback and then pick a top three potentially quarterback with the team that you have right now, which is pretty terrible. But I agree with the first two first round picks is really good. What surprised me is they turned down the Carolina trade offer, which was Teddy Bridgewater and the 8th overall pick. If they got the 8th overall pick, they could maybe flip that, trade up. They had a couple different options with that pick. They would have 2 first round picks, obviously. So I think that would have been intriguing, potentially moving with Carolina for Stafford. But for Stafford and LA, I think this makes all the sense in the world. They had Jared Goff. They have they have the best defensive player in the NFL, one of the, I think, greatest in the history of the game, and Aaron Donald. You got Jalen Ramsey. And, what's been holding them back has been their offense. And you look at Stafford, I think he's a guy who gets a lot of talk about being an elite quarterback playing for a bad team. I still think he has to prove that because he hasn't won a playoff game in his career. He hasn't won a division title. So, he's a lot of fanfare and not a lot of production, just to be quite frank. But with the team that they have, the Rams look like a Super Bowl contender, but they are in a tough division, which will make it tough on Stafford right from jump.
Yeah, I think like in terms of the Carolina deal, what do you think? I would say Stafford had a say in where he went. I'd say that might have been part of the reason why. Whereas I like the position of the Rams better in Carolina, and I personally myself, I like Goff as well as Teddy Bridgewater myself, but because I know the GM in Detroit, I think he was a scout for the Rams when they were scouting Goff. So I mean, maybe he had some insight there that we're not aware of. But I mean, to me, Goff is Goff at this point. He's very limited, and I think McVay made him better than he really was. So there's that element. It would have been nice to move up the draft. You're not getting number 1 from Jacksonville. No. And I think that's where the real franchise quarterback is. After that, it's a gamble. And to me, this takes a little bit of the pressure off. You don't want a Sam Darnold situation in Detroit where you got the star quarterback, 8th overall or 5th overall, and then the pressure mounts instantaneously. I think this buys them some time. It gives them, the ability to really look at their team. And I think you got to build your team from the offense and defensive line out. It's great to have a quarterback, but if you can't protect them, what's the point? We see that with a lot of teams with quarterbacks that aren't protected. So I hope that the Lions will start from the ground up and work their way through. And I think this Goff gives them that time. He is a name, and he's, it's kind of nice for the fans too to have somebody that could maybe, put some good games together. But I don't think Goff is the long-term answer. I think we're on a 5-6 year rebuild, I would say, in Detroit. The Rams, yeah, they're looking good. And I think that division is open. It is a tough division, but there's a lot of bit of chaos in that division, wouldn't you say, in some senses?
Yeah, I mean, you got San Francisco, which is still, I mean, they have one great year, that's regressed. Obviously, Kittle and Jimmy G being out all of last year, Richard Sherman. So they're kind of in flux. You got Arizona, who look like they're going to be a playoff team, and then the last 6 games just forgot how to play. They obviously had J.J. Watt, but he's not what he used to be. And then you got the Rams in there. But it's a tough division for sure. I think the Rams are the best team in the division right now on paper. Seattle is also in flux with Russell Wilson. What do they do there? Their defense. So I agree with you that is definitely open. But another thing for me with LA is I agree. I like teams that take the plunge. The big worry for me is Stafford's health. I mean, the guy, he's as durable as it gets. I give him a ton of credit for playing through this year a lot. Detroit was done after about the eighth game, but he continued to play. But he's always injured, Adam. He's always injured. He's had back problems. So that worries me slightly about him in LA with them wanting to win a Super Bowl. He's got question marks when it comes to durability.
Yeah, there's definitely that element there too. But I would say, again, this is just a perspective, but I would say Stafford's going to be energized by the opportunity to win. You know what I mean? He goes into camp and he sees his team. And I mean, it's not going to keep him healthy on the field, but it's going to maybe give him that, if you're hurt in Detroit and you're 0-4, like, you know what, I'm not rushing back to get on the field, knowing your season is over, right? And you still got to grind it out for 12 more games. So hopefully that will do it. He's been durable. Like, I mean, he has had some ups and downs these last few years. I know he's had some off the field issues with his wife being sick with, I think, cancer. She had some sort. So that was a distraction. So again, I think you can have any quarterback. You can't determine your season based on if this person gets hurt. So I think the Rams did the right thing. I think they'll be well coached. And I think hopefully he won't get his run over as much as he did in Detroit. And we'll see what happens. But I think that division's open. Like you said, Murray didn't have a great second half. This Russell Wilson out of nowhere, that really kind of shocked me and surprised me. Like, I don't want to be traded, but here's my list.
Which means trade me.
Which means trades me. And then San Francisco, well, they go as Jimmy Garoppolo goes. And for the last 2 years, he has been non-existent. So, and again, you never know what can happen, but I like the coaching. I think the Rams have a really good chance at taking the division. Yeah,
so just sticking in that division for a second, Russell Wilson obviously released his agent said, "Yeah, I don't want to be traded, but if Russell was traded, you could trade me to Dallas, Vegas, Chicago, which was a surpriser, and New Orleans. And your intuition, do you think he's a Seattle starter day one of training camp in July?"
I would say he is. Chicago, I think he has a connection with college. I think he played university or close to there. Where did he play college, Russell Wilson?
Wisconsin.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's the Chicago connection. Some nature, I don't know. But the teams were kind of funny. You're not going to Dallas, I don't think. Jerry Jones is not, like, he's in the middle of the Dak issue. Everybody wants to play for America.
And that's done now.
And that's done. So again, that's something to talk about too later on. I would say he's starting, but I know he's gotten run over a lot. I think that's probably part of the issue, is that he continually is getting hit, you know. But I would say he's going to start the season. Where else is he going to go? I mean, there's a lot of people that would take him, but you can't fit a Russell Wilson into the cap very easily. What do you think? Where do you think he stands?
Yeah, the of his list, unless he expands it, of his list, the Dallas one made some sense to me if they didn't sign Dak, which, like you said, we'll get into. But now that he's re-signed, obviously that's off the table. The Bears, again, okay, you went to college there. Do you want to? I'd rather stay in Seattle. You have a better chance of winning in Seattle than you ever will in Chicago. Who? It's the Bears. I mean, you know the Bears. I mean, the Lions beat them sometimes, so they can't be that good of a team.
Easy now.
The one team on the list that made some sense to me was Vegas, because you could put Derek Carr in the deal. You could trade. It wouldn't be straight up. Obviously, Vegas be getting Seattle would be getting more, but Derek Carr kind of gets put down as this below average quarterback. I don't see it that way. I think he played pretty well last year. They had a bottom 3 defense, and he had a career year. He had 4 interceptions. So that could potentially be a move where they could move Derek Carr with Russell Wilson, add in a few other, maybe a first round pick and a defensive player if that's what they're looking for. But New Orleans, no, they got cap hell right now. They can't fit that in. Yeah, Vegas. But if I'd be with you. I think he stays in Seattle at least for another year, and maybe they include him and let him pick some offensive linemen to better help protect him.
Yeah, and you make a good point with Vegas. I was kind of curious about that one too. It didn't really make sense. I think I'm in agreement. Carr does get a bad rap when you watch him play. When he's on, like he's as good as any. But the problem with Vegas to me is John Gruden. He loves the players he doesn't have, and as soon as he gets the player, he hates them. So, and I mean, Russell Wilson is at the other end of his career. He's not, he's not over
32.
yet. But Gruden likes those old guys, and he pays them for past performance too. Like he's paying, or he likes to get those veterans as though they're 26, but they're coming on to Gruden's roster when they're 32, right? And he's paying for service already rendered. So I could see that. I wouldn't want to play for Gruden as a quarterback because, I mean, it's never Gruden's fault. It's everybody else's fault. It's the GM's fault for not bringing in the right players. And he falls in love with players that he doesn't have. So as soon as he has you, he won't love Russell Wilson anymore. But yeah, Carr, that could work. That would be a deal. But I think, like you said and I said, I think he's going to start in Seattle, and hopefully they'll have a say in what's going on and go from there.
Yeah, and for him, he's kind of got to look in the mirror too, because he holds on to the ball way too long. Sometimes he's just waiting back there, waiting. Sometimes we've learned from Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, throw the ball away. Yeah, you look like a bit of a female body part sometimes, for lack of a better word, because you don't want to take a hit. But Brady's going to be 45 and he's still playing. So it works. Brady's missed one whole season in a 22-year career. So throwing the ball away, falling on the ground, you take it on your pride takes a hit in minor moments, but when you're lifting the Lombardi, nobody remembers you throwing that ball away on a Sunday afternoon in November.
Well, and when you throw the ball away, you're not
losing yardage
15 yards in the play. So it's I know it looks maybe bad, but I mean it's a smart offensive play in football to get rid of the ball. But yeah, it's crazy. The difference of 1 second in terms of release it's exponential in terms of what happens with the end result in the NFL. And guys like Brady and Rodgers are excellent at getting the ball out of their hands, and it really does have an impact. So yeah, he's definitely to blame too. But he hasn't had much help in front of him, I would say, either. He's taken a lot. But.
Yeah. You mentioned Dak Prescott earlier, and obviously that was the big news this week. I thought he was going to play under the franchise tag for the second straight year, making $37.7 million. It came out about Monday night, 7:00, that he'd reached a new deal with the Dallas Cowboys. 4 years. He's going to be making $75 million this year with that's the largest amount of money in one season in the history of pro football, with $66 million as a signing bonus. He's actually going to make more in the 4 years of his contract than Patrick Mahomes will in the next 4 years. So Patrick Mahomes' contract wasn't that great. But he resigns, gets a boatload of money and guarantees. What were your initial thoughts on the contract when you saw the breaking news come up?
Well, I even remember just listening to sports last year about the Dax deal and what was going to happen. I think they're crazy. I think it's an absolute ridiculous amount of money to pay for him. He's really, yeah, he's good, but he's not better than Patrick Mahomes. He had them over a barrel, it seems. And I mean, America's team, yeah, but Jerry Jones, like this is why Dallas is Dallas. This is why you either love Dallas or hate them. And I'm not a big fan of Dallas, but they're kind of like the New York Rangers or the New York Yankees. They just spend, 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 and it's not really good football spending. I would sit him. Like, you know what? You were hurt last year. You can't really sit him. I wouldn't sit him, but I wouldn't have paid him that. I would have said, okay, well, like move on to the next, because you wouldn't get that anywhere else. You wouldn't have gotten that anywhere else in the league. Do you think?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Who would have paid him that?
The Bears, Carolina, bad football teams, basically. That's what I'll say. I think, is Dak a top 5 quarterback? No, I think he's in the 10 to 15 range. That would be where I'd place him. I wouldn't have signed him that much money probably either. But what I said this week on the podcast is you're worth what someone's willing to pay you. And I don't begrudge him at all for taking this deal. And I think that's been a lot of the sentiment this week that, how could Dak take this much money and he's not worth? Well, who cares? Like, you're an athlete. This is it. This is your contract. You're set for life if you know what you're doing. And for Jerry Jones, I just don't think he saw a better alternative. We're talking about quarterback movement. Well, if you're looking at free agent quarterbacks, there's really not that many good ones. We look at Jameis Winston. We'll talk about a few later, but they're all veteran or unproven guys. And I think for Jerry, he said, maybe Dak holds out if he gets the franchise tag again. Then who the hell is he going to play at quarterback? And clearly the draft wasn't an option for them. They're too high up. So, yeah, is he Patrick Mahomes? No. But I think we've seen year over year, it doesn't really matter where you are in the pecking order. It's just when you're up and you'll make the money to reset the market, whether you're better than the guy that made the money before you or not.
Well, you go back to the Jared Goff deal.
Right.
Basically, he got the same thing as Dak did, in my opinion.
Yep.
Like timing was good, but look what happens 3-4 years down the road. Is that franchise has missed 2 years. They were in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
They've missed the opportunity, okay, to challenge for it because they put too much money in a guy that was not worth it. Fortunately for them, they had drafted well and they had some good players around them. Like, to me, Dallas is a train wreck. So I'm going to pay Dak $75 million to finish 8-8. I mean, I know the division is kind of up in the air, but I mean, based on what I saw last year, Dallas didn't look very good.
No.
And I do understand the pressure of Dallas that you need that star, but I think that this is what hampers franchises. This is why Dallas is always kind of hyped but never really produce. And you have to be fiscally responsible. And there's an old saying that as soon as the fans in the audience are determining who stays on your team, the GM is going to be in the audience too. But I mean, I know this is Jerry Jones, the owner, but again, he's the GM. And if he would keep his nose out of it, I think Dallas maybe has a chance. But he's constantly in there stirring the pot. And I don't think that's healthy for an organization to have the owner basically running the team. So That's what you get. You get $75 million, 12th best quarterback in the league. Well, have at it, Dallas. We'll see you. Like, there's another 10 years down the drain.
Yeah, it's tough for sure. I think you look at for Prescott and his leverage, you had Goff and Wentz, both in his draft class. They went 1 and 2 in the draft, and he was a 4th round pick making no money his first 3 years in the league. And he's looking at them saying, well, they got this deal. I'm better than them. And you can make the argument that he is. I mean, right now, I think you'd say he's better than Goff and Wentz? Would you say he's better than both of them? He's better than both of them right now, currently?
Yeah, oh, for sure. He's shown some glimpses of brilliance, but you can't argue that Goff did make it to a Super Bowl
Hmm.
too. So
And
that's you
Wentz
got,
would have won an MVP if he
and he
hadn't
was
blown his knee
on.
out.
Yeah. So I mean, if we took microcosms, if we said, look, let's look at Goff for this part of this year, look at Wentz when he started that season. He was on his way to the MVP until he got hurt. So they've each had their glimpses for sure. But again, to me, it's like these young guys, and I mean, it's not to be critical, but have they not seen what Tom Brady has done for his whole career? Is take less, make sure that you have the right protection, make sure you have the right team around you, and it leads to victories. But I know you got to make your money too. And Tom has Giselle, who's richer than
She
he is.
makes more money than him. Like, she's the
Yeah.
breadwinner. So yeah, I get that. And, I kind of have this conversation with my dad about it. And I kind of say, well, if if you got $40 million shoved in your face, there's no human being on earth that's going to say no to it, including Tom Brady. It came out yesterday. He's going to make 41 million this year. So he's not making $2 million bucks. He's not Tom Brady, this great guy who's making no money, which the media tries to do. But we'll get to the facts here. But it, I think it's so tough for players to say, I'm going to take so much less money. And, Brady did it forever, but you could say it hurt the quarterback market because it stopped players from making money they probably should have. I mean, we've seen the last 5 years, really, it's when quarterbacks have started to make really big money. Not like for decades, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady didn't make that much money. And, their counterparts couldn't cash in on really big contracts, really big, career earnings because the likes of Brady and others weren't.
Yeah, there's that for sure. They did kind of set the bar financially with guys like Peyton and Tom at the top. Well, you're not getting paid more than those guys, so it did hamper your negotiations. But I mean, if we're going to talk about salary and like concerns, to me, it's like it's those guys that go into camp and just make the roster and get cut and career's over. You know what I mean? That's where the NFL really should be looking. But I agree with you. Like if I was Dak, I would take the money as well. I'm not saying this is any fault of Dak. But what I'm saying is the agent did a real damn good job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he put him over a barrel. And I mean, don't forget, they trolleyed him off on a cart last year, at the end of last year. We haven't seen him since. So I would assume that Jerry Jones and his doctors have been involved. They wouldn't sign this deal without knowing kind of how the surgery went. But I don't blame Dak at all. I'm just saying that, like, to me, it's typical Dallas Cowboy behavior, and they don't seem to learn. And again, maybe it's not Dak's responsibility to take a pay cut, but I think that the fact that even he could look at Jerry Jones with a straight face and say that that's what I'm worth, and Jerry Jones agree with it, like that's where Dallas has a problem, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, obviously, like you said before, they're in a very winnable division. You got the Giants who, no, they're not, I wouldn't be real confident picking the Giants. You got the Washington football team who have an elite defense, but right now they got Taylor Heineke under contract and nobody else. Not a lot of confidence there. And then you look at Philadelphia, they got Jalen Hurts, who's played, a cup of coffee so far in his NFL career. They're really cash strapped, and they have no real weapons on offense, and their defense leaves something to be desired. So, with right now on paper, the Cowboys should cruise to a division title. So,
but again, as a Cowboys fan, which I'm not, okay, for the record, I mean, a division title, like everybody in the league, anybody that watches 5 games of football knows that division stinks. So, hooray, you won the division, right? It was last year, it was like, I don't want the division, you take it. We had the Giants in at the last game of the season, still not. So, yeah, it's great to win the division, but they're not going anywhere after that. And I don't think that's kind of what Dallas wants as a fan base. I think they want to be a contender. I think they want to be a franchise that's, the Steelers, maybe not a good example today, but they've been a franchise that have always been there, right? And they've always been in contention, whether they won every time or not. So again, you can have the division, but I mean, it is what it is in that sense. I don't love the deal if I was running the team, and I just find Jerry Jones getting his nose in it again. And if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be like, I would be upset.
Yeah, no, definitely a polarizing move either way, positive or negatively. People, it'll be up to him and what he does on the field, because now it's basically Super Bowl or bust for him, because he's making that much money. There's no more fourth round draft pick and all of that. So, pivoting to the AFC East, New England Patriots forever were they had Tom Brady at quarterback. They were set for 20 years, and last year he leaves. Obviously, moves on to Tampa Bay. They bring in Cam Newton, kind of off the scrap heap. Nobody wanted him. And it looked to me at the end of the year, kind of his year-end presser, he was saying, goodbye, New England. Like, I had a fun year. It's been fun, but I'm leaving. But then Friday morning, it comes out Cam Newton re-signs in New England 1 year, $14 million, with a lot of that in incentives. So it's not $14 million base salary, but he re-signs in New England. Were you surprised by the deal? Yeah, were you surprised by Cam returning to Foxborough?
Yeah, I was shocked, just like the Dax deal, really. I thought just even the body language and the energy kind of he exuded in the last couple of weeks, like I didn't think he was coming back. And I didn't know how much, I didn't know if they liked him or not. To me, it's a 1 year deal. It is what it is. I was thinking, or thought that they would probably go after Jimmy Garoppolo again. I thought they would want to be bringing him back. And I mean, there was a lot of chatter that he would be available. They might still. You never know. I
Yeah,
mean,
I still think they can.
they still can. So it's not as though like this is. I guess you want to go into camp knowing that you have somebody that can start that's viable. It's a bridge deal essentially. It gives them a year to kind of see what can happen. And again, not to excuse Cam for his poor play, but he got on the COVID list. He didn't have many guys to throw to. He was learning the system. So maybe he comes into camp this year knowing the system, kind of knowing what's expected. Maybe he'll have a better year. And again, I don't think anybody in New England is thinking that they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. I think it's kind of like Detroit. This is a rebuild period. Goff is a patchwork, and I think Cam really for now is patchwork. And if they could get Garoppolo, they bring him in. If something comes up, I don't think New England would hesitate to, react if they could move up in the draft or get a quarterback they like in free agency or a trade or whatever. So on first blush, I was surprised, but now the more you think about it, it's like, what else? Who are you going to get? Ryan Fitzy? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where you
Yeah,
at?
yeah. I wasn't that surprised. I was and I wasn't, because I was like, well, this is so New England. They never make flashy moves at quarterback. Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick, so he wasn't the guy in the draft that you look at and say, oh, we had to have him. But Cam played there last year. I agree. I think coming in the second year, if they need to give him somebody to throw to, because he had nobody last year. I think it's, saying that Cam Newton was done, I think that was a premature thing. And I think it's unfair, quite frankly, because Tom Brady looked pretty awful throwing to those receivers the year before, and he just won a Super Bowl. I'm not saying Cam's going to go win an MVP, but I think he can be a better quarterback than what he showed last year. But yeah, the one thing for me is, if they do add weapons, what is Cam going to be, the best backup quarterback in the league, or is he going to be that mentor? Is this the year that New England finally goes in the draft and trades up to get a guy? I don't see them moving into the top 5. That's not Bill Belichick's MO during his career. But, the Alabama quarterback, Mac Jones, I think could go, middle, maybe 15th pick. Does New England trade up if he's still on the board and say, grab him, put him behind Cam for a year? Then he's their, long-term starter. So free agency, there's not a lot of options. Jameis Winston maybe, but I don't see him being a Bill Belichick type guy. So really the big thing for me is the draft, and if that's where New England decides to go to potentially draft their next franchise quarterback.
And I think by signing Newton, it really gives you a lot of options, right? Like you said, if they do move up in the draft, there's no pressure, right? This kid doesn't have to come into camp and win the job, and it's the next best thing. He can sit behind Cam, learn the ropes, and you can never have enough quarterbacking in the NFL. So I think really in hindsight, it is probably a smart decision. And like you said, the free agent market is not great. And there's lots of trade rumblings with quarterbacks, but that costs you assets. And I think sometimes teams get caught up in that too. So, yeah, it is what it is, and I think Cam Newton will be better this year. I don't think he's going to be, MVP caliber again, but I think it's a decent move.
Yeah, it's a placeholder, like you said, and hopefully he can find some success, because I root for the guy. I don't root for any team, but I root for him because I think he gets picked on a lot. And I don't know if that's because he was a guy that came into the league as an African-American quarterback and did stuff differently. Now everybody's doing that. The league has to adapt to it, but that's just a personal thing for me that I really hate how he's been treated the past couple of years.
Well, just to touch on that, I like him too. I like his game. He was electric. He was ahead of his curve, I say too, when he came in. I lost a lot of respect for him in the Super Bowl against the Broncos. There was a fumble and they were in the game and he didn't dive. I don't know if you remember that play.
Yeah, I do.
The ball was at his feet and he looked up and saw a hit coming and he let the ball go. He didn't even dive on it. He was too scared to get hit. And I mean, he's a big boy. He's like 6'6", 6'7". And after I saw that, I was like, oh, you'll never win with this guy. He knew a hit was coming and he wasn't. And it's in the Super Bowl. You know, week 14 when you're out of the playoffs. Okay, yeah, I'll give you a pass. But you're in the Super Bowl. You have time on the clock and you can make a play and get that ball, and you don't bother. I lost a lot of respect for him there, just as an athlete.
Right. No, good point. He was battered that game, but at the same, I remember the play, like you're saying, and it was right at his feet, and he didn't want it. He didn't want it as much as his opponents, or he was worried about taking a hit, which is always at quarterback. If you see a guy flinch, it's almost half over then for him, but we'll see what he does this year. Also Friday, of course, the Bucs would have to release this news right after Cam Newton resigns, because why not? Tom Brady reworks his contract. He's signed up for another year. He's playing into 2022. He saved $19 million on their cap for this year. And, it could be big because they have a lot of potential free agents leaving. Ndamukong Suh, the former Detroit Lion, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski. They re-signed Levante David, and obviously the big fish being Shaq Barrett, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So of the four I just named, who stands out to you being like instrumental in keeping for Brady and the Bucs?
Well, I think Barrett, based on the playoffs. I mean, his regular season was fair. He had I think 8 or 9 sacks. Like, it wasn't his best regular season, but in the playoffs, I mean, he was instrumental. Antonio Brown, he's replaceable. When you have Mike Evans there, you can find secondary passing. And the Gronk, well, he's another one too that you really didn't see much, but I mean, they connected during the Super Bowl. Right. But I think in terms of Brady at his age, you want to have a supporting cast that, creates turnovers, gets the ball back, puts pressure on the opposition when you're sitting there on the bench kind of watching. So I think Barrett's the biggest signing, but I mean, 19, I think they could probably sign 2 of the 3, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. I worry that they're going to lose both defensive guys. Barrett, I think, is going to get a ton of money if he wants to take it. He's the best pass rusher on the board. And in my opinion, the 3 most important positions in football are quarterback, left tackle, and defensive end pass rush. Because if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win. But if you don't have a good left tackle to protect your quarterback's blind side, you're not going to win either. And if you have an elite pass rusher to eliminate the left tackle, it eliminates the quarterback. We saw that with Patrick Mahomes. His left tackle couldn't protect him, Mike Remmers, and the game was over before it started. He was running for his life. So Shaq Barrett was a huge reason for that. We see bad teams give out big contracts all the time. I think I'm looking at a team that potentially could be on the rise in Miami. I think Miami is a team that could give out a contract to Shaq Barrett where they say, maybe we keep Tua, maybe we make a move for Deshaun Watson. Come here, we'll be a Super Bowl contender with you and with an elite quarterback. Also, Shaq Barrett, potentially Green Bay. I think we could see them cut one of their pass rushers. They save some cap money, and they say, okay, Aaron, we'll give you a receiver too, but we'll bring in Shaq Barrett and let's go beat the team that, we need you because you beat us last year, kind of thing. So those are a couple options I think that he could potentially go to.
Yeah, well, and I think obviously the restructuring of the deal, it puts him, I think, at 9 million this year for cap space. I think Tom Brady had these conversations about Barrett and all those guys. He wouldn't be doing this otherwise, I think.
Right.
And we all know that it's, again, I've said this probably for 10 years, that the clock is ticking on Tom Brady. But I would assume that the reason why this deal has been structured the way it is to re-sign those guys in this window and see if they can take another crack at it this year. So I would think that they would understand that it's not always the flash that wins games, and they won the Super Bowl, so they must know. But you need to get a guy like Barrett signed, no question, more than Antonio, even the Gronk.
Yeah, I think Gronk will be back he'll play for anything, like a couple $1,000,000 because he's only going to play with Brady. I mean, that's clear. He didn't stay in New England. I think he only wants to play with Tom. So pay him, $3 million base salary and some incentives for touchdowns or whatever. I think he'll be back. AB, it seems like he only wants to play with Brady too. So if he doesn't, rob a bank or something in the offseason, then he should be back on the field. But, Sue is a guy, obviously, him well from Detroit, fit in well with Tampa Bay, really, really good competitor, kind of a dirty player. But he's efficient. He could get some good money too, because you win a Super Bowl, you become that much more valuable to teams, even if you're not, that elite of a player.
Yeah, definitely. It's what have you done for me lately, sort of thing too. But yeah, Sue would be, again, in Detroit. He was a guy that when he left, I was disappointed because he had that edge to him. Yeah, and he is dirty. He'll do a cleat stomp here or there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you need to win. Those are the types of things that really puts a team on its heels. So yeah, Tampa's got a lot of shuffling to do. But I would say they're probably going to do whatever they can to get most of those guys signed, so that I would say the defense and Barrett are the priority, I would assume, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think definitely the defense, because Brady's winning all these Super Bowls, but there's a key common thing on every Super Bowl team he's on. The defense is top 10. And in my opinion, the Bucs was the bigger reason that the Bucs defense, the bigger reason they won the Super Bowl than Tom Brady in that game. So we'll see what happens. Some other big free agent names, interesting one, Aaron Jones, the running back for Green Bay, has been a really productive back for years. They could have put the franchise tag on him. They decided not to. Surprised me a little bit. They do have Jamal Williams and AJ Dillon there, but any destination you could see Aaron Jones going to?
Well, there's rumblings that there's talk with the Jets, but the Jets are on anybody free agent. Mm-hmm. They're going to the Jets. So Miami is another fit, I think. Mm-hmm. I would like to. You think Miami's a contender? That's something we can talk about a little bit later on.
I said I think they could be not with the team they have now.
Okay, no. They're on the rise.
If they got a Deshaun Watson, they're a contender.
Yeah, well, quite a few teams would be if you got Deshaun Watson.
Detroit wouldn't be.
Oh, okay. Don't go right for the jugular right away.
The Jets wouldn't be.
Yeah, no, I know. But, I'm even surprised Green Bay are going to let him go.
That was the biggest surprise to me. I thought they'd franchise tag him just for a year, and then if he stinks, let him go.
As we've talked about before, one of Detroit's biggest issues was they didn't have a run game. Mm-hmm. So you can't be an effective quarterback if you don't have that secondary option, or you keep the defense guessing, right? So it surprised me. He's got 3,000 yards rushing, 50 touchdowns, something like that in the last couple of years. Yeah. So he's good. But I will say running backs to me are also fly by night. 2 years ago, it was Todd Gurley is the be all and end all. Really, they're replaceable. Although you think they're not replaceable, if you can save money on them, you don't want to overpay for a running back. I would say Kamara is probably the exception to the rule.
Right, and him and Derrick Henry.
Yes, yeah, but Henry's more like a lineman, like the
Yeah.
size of him. So that's what I could understand maybe in Green Bay's end, that it's a meat grinder next up, and I mean, find somebody else. But where do you think he's going to end up?
Yeah, just to your first point, I agree. I would never want to be the team to give a running back a second contract. We look at Gurley, we look at Ezekiel Elliott. These guys aren't the same now. Then you're paying them a lot of money for what they did before, and it's tough for running backs. I think the NFL needs to change when the running backs get contracts. I think they should get them after their second or third season, because teams aren't going to give running backs any money anymore because they keep seeing this pattern, right? So I think that's a flaw in the NFL, and running backs deserve to get paid too. So that's just a general theme, big picture. Um, you know, I look at Detroit, and I don't know what they're going to plan to do, because you have Jared Goff. He's not, he's not an elite quarterback, but he's not a guy that's going to go 2-14. He's not that bad. Do they look at Aaron Jones? You've mentioned it. Running back has been a need for Detroit since Barry Sanders. And he's a good running back. If you can get him on a shorter term deal, maybe they take a peek at him. The Miami one is another. I agree with you there. The Jets doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. That's like signing Le'Veon Bell without having an offensive line, which they've already done, and it didn't work. Maybe Kansas City. I think that would be an interesting angle. They're a team that really, they made it to the Super Bowl, but they lacked a running game last year. Mahomes had to do a lot himself. So if they could make the money work, depending on what Aaron Jones is looking for in term and years, maybe he would go to a contender for a little less money to look at a Super Bowl.
Well, they got Hunt, Kansas City, don't they? Kareem Hunt.
No, he's in Cleveland.
Oh, he went to Cleveland?
He's in Cleveland with Nick Chubb. They got a two-headed monster there.
Okay. Detroit, yeah, that's probably exactly where he's going to go, because now that they don't have a quarterback, they're going to get a running game. That's exactly where he's going to Detroit. Simple as that. As soon as they get rid of the quarterback,
bite a kneecap off and keep playing.
Exactly. Now they'll be able to run the ball, but they won't be able to throw it. So I'll go with Detroit. In terms of Kansas City, I never really thought of that. Who's the kid that got the Bell?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, he's not bad, but I mean, yeah, they could do that.
He's kind of a third down back to me, Helaire.
Are they cap tight, Kansas City?
They just opened. Mahomes took a pay cut, so they've opened up some cap room, and they cut 2 offensive linemen this week.
Okay, yeah. See, I'd want to fill that hole first before I get the running back. I don't really know where he's going to end up, but again, I think you're right.
Maybe Pittsburgh too.
Pittsburgh. Connor, is Connor a free agent?
1 year left, but they could move him or make that work.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story too in Pittsburgh. What's going on there?
Yeah.
But I don't know where he'll end up. But whoever gets him, like you said, I think that second contract with the running back is dangerous. So I wouldn't be in a rush to overpay.
Speaking of Pittsburgh, a guy who's played the franchise tag last year, elite pass rusher, but tore his ACL towards the end of last year, Bud Dupree. He's played alongside TJ Watt. They both had a lot of success together. But coming off an ACL injury, I kind of feel bad for the guy, because I don't know if he's going to get the money he probably deserves. But any team that speaks to you that could use a pass rusher?
Well, the Giants. I've heard rumblings that he might be off to the Giants. I don't know if that's true. I don't know what he is. I don't know, based on his last year. I don't know if he's overrated, if he's like, what is Bud Dupree in your opinion? Where do you see him? Like, is he worth a big contract?
I don't think so, because he's playing with TJ Watt. So you're going to get secondary coverage every time. You're going to play against the second best tackle, right, on every snap. Going to the Giants, he could put him with Leonard Williams, who's really emerged as an elite pass rusher. So that would make sense, because he wouldn't have to be the number one guy. But when I think of number one pass rushers like Aaron Donald, TJ Watt, these elite, I don't put him in that category, because I just don't see him being the horse of the defense to get at the quarterback, snap in, the Von Miller, that type of guy. So secondary guy, maybe he could be, a DeMarcus Ware to Von Miller towards the end of his career, kind of that role.
Yeah, and if he gets that kind of money, then that's a good decision as a franchise to put but I find like with Arizona, go back to Watt,
Mm-hmm.
Arizona son, they're paying him way too much. Like he's more effective if he plays 25 plays a game. So he's to me in Arizona, that's a huge mistake when they
Yeah.
signed Watt and they're giving him all that money. I think they're again, like you said earlier, they're paying him for past performance. They're paying him as a 25-year-old he's not capable of doing what he did before. If you have, like Dupree, if you put him kind of in a secondary role or don't expect him to be the number one, then you have that element that, okay, that's a good value contract. But if you're getting paid like a Von Miller, like that's a terrible contract, in my view, anyway.
Mm-hmm. No, I like him as a number 2, and I do hope he gets a good payday because I think he's playing under the franchise tag the past couple of years. I hate that part of football because it's really hinders people from making money, and they got to play under the tag, and then they get injured, and then it kind of screws them. So we'll see what happens with Bud Dupree come Tuesday. I don't think he'll wait long to get a contract. Going back to your Lions, one of Matthew Stafford's favorite end zone weapons, Kenny Golladay, was not franchise tagged by the Lions. Obviously, he could still go back. They could sign him via free agency, but I doubt that happens. But Galladay's been a guy's had some injury problems, but when he plays, he's a good receiver, one of the best red zone receivers in the game. 27 years old. Where do you see him going, and are you upset that the Lions did not keep him?
I was shocked with Dak. I was shocked with Russell Wilson, but this
Mm-hmm.
one really blew my mind. I was certain they were going to franchise tag him. I didn't even think about it. What they're doing, I don't know. That tells me that they're on a long-term plan, and that Goff kind of goes back to our Goff conversation that it's just a band-aid for the transition with the draft picks. Golladay, wow. I mean, I find he's an elite talent. He's somebody that I think can change the tone of the game in one play. His vertical is second to none. And he's a battler, which I love. Like he's always fighting for the ball. Where is he going to go? I mean, there's many places that would love to have him. I mean, you can look at it even in New England, a team that needs to have some wide receivers. That would be a possibility. Again, I think the Jets are linked to him too, but Baltimore would be maybe a good fit.
No, I like that one.
It's hard to say. I think he'll be heavily sought after.
Yeah.
Where he ends up, I don't know. But a team like Baltimore, really, that could really put them in a position to be in contention, I think. So
Yeah, I like the Baltimore one. They need him. They need a number one guy. Hollywood Brown's a good receiver, but he can't be your number one. They've had just good receivers that play the past couple of years, and I think it's shown that Lamar needs somebody that he can rely on big plays. And Golladay makes tough catches, so he would fit that. Staying in the division, I think Pittsburgh is a team that could use a Kenny Golladay. Juju Smith-Schuster, who we'll talk about, is a free agent. He's had his problems. They do have James Washington. They have some, Deontay Johnson. But Golladay is he's got a different body. He's got a different build than every receiver than they have, including, Chase Claypool. I think he's a guy that Ben would love because he's big. You can throw him the ball. He's similar to Des Bryant in his prime when he was with the Cowboys. He's going to catch those 50-50 balls. He's not going to burn you down the field. But I think Ben would really like to throw the ball to him in his last year in the NFL too.
yeah, there's elements of a game that reminds me of Megatron too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just his height and his build. In terms of Ben, I think the bigger issue in Pittsburgh. Well, I mean, Schuster's gone, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think Ben's done. So if I was Pittsburgh, I would kind of really. I know they like to be competitive every year. Ben does need somebody, but I don't think. Again, as a GM, I would be in no rush to be getting Golladay just because I think we got to figure out Big Ben. I was under the assumption that he was done, and I don't know. I know they had a meeting with him over the course.
He's back. He's back.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does that mean? Is he starting? Is he there to transition? Like I have a feeling that Ben thinks he's starting. Like again, he's 28, but the way he looked last year, it was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They started, what was it, 10-0? Was it
11 and
10
0.
11-0, and then they just fell off a cliff. It was a train wreck. So I think there's bigger issues in the Pittsburgh. Golladay would be great, and it would be great for Ben to throw to him. But I think as a franchise, I don't know if that's really the best move. But I mean, they must believe in him. What do you think about the Ben situation?
Yeah, I think he's pretty close to being done. And teams, maybe because I'm not a fan, so I don't really get this, but the sentimentality that teams have, they can't part with their guys that have been there for so long, and it's this emotional thing where we can't let them go. Like, I don't know, me just let them go, like rip off the Band-Aid. And that maybe I'm different in that way because I just don't care. But I would have moved on and started, they're in cap hell too. Start a rebuild, start something, even if you start Dwayne Haskins for the whole year and he's terrible, but at least you got a guy that you can try to nurture and show the way. But yeah, I just think they're gonna want to give Ben the best opportunity to win. If you're bringing him back, it's not to lose, 12 games. I think that's kind of how I see it. They'll want to be competitive with him, knowing it's his last year, the swan song season, and try to be competitive, win the division, and potentially compete for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, for sure. There's that element too with back to your comment about like the Band-Aid and ripping it off. You look at the New York Giants and kind of the mess they're in with
Eli
Manning.
Manning, yeah.
I would say Pittsburgh, to a degree, is the exception. They're extremely loyal. Like I can see it from that organization because they've had 5 coaches in their whole history. Like that team is synonymous with loyalty to players and to things like that. But I do agree, you get into trouble when you don't realize, you will not acknowledge that the talent is no longer there, and that happens all over sports, and you see it a lot. So you think, see, I would say that Pittsburgh are hopeful that they're going to be 10-6, but I don't really think it's based on.
I don't think it's set in stone because I think they're the third best team in their division right now. If the season started today, I'd put Cleveland and Baltimore ahead of them.
100%. So, like you said, why not get rid of Ben, move on, draft, like start the rebuild now?
Yeah, that's what I would have done.
Instead of dumping money into Golladay, which is nice, he's good to. It's a Band-Aid. Okay, you're going to give Ben so we can get 8 wins this year to finish third in the division and not make the playoffs. Well, what you didn't really accomplish, and then you're picking 15th overall. So
no, it's yeah, I don't get it either. It's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But they're an organization that's so. They don't believe in rebuilding. I truly believe that, because when do they ever do it? They don't. I mean, Mike Tomlin's coached there since 2004, and he's never had a losing season. I mean, think about that. That's pretty damn impressive. To go this long without a losing season. I mean, that's just their MO. They don't like to rebuild. They don't like to admit defeat. And in sports, the landscape right now, I don't think you can be mid-pack forever and just assume that you're going to get better on the fly. You need a lot of luck to do that. You look at the Detroit Red Wings, the LA Kings in hockey, it doesn't happen. You kind of need to commit to a rebuild and, burn it down, so to speak.
Yeah, and there's that element too. You look at kind of reminds me of the Aaron Rodgers situation last year. When you do draft a quarterback, let's say you're being, preemptive and you're saying, okay, Aaron Rodgers got 3-4 years left, and you bring in the young quarterback, then that's a big hoopla and controversy, and Aaron Rodgers is ticked off. And so, I mean, there is that element too, that it's disrespect. But I mean, these players, I think Aaron and probably Big Ben has to understand that, you know what, you are 32. We're getting a young guy in here and you're going to mentor them and stuff like that. So,
and Aaron, you were Jordan Love once. And
yes,
you were Jordan Love when Brett Favre was, still doing the Wrangler commercials, but he was in better shape and looked better.
Yeah. And I mean, in the old school, in the olden days, it's not so much now. It's kind of like, you're young, you're in. I mean, Drew Bledsoe, he was starting, and Tom Brady, and Brett Favre brought up Aaron Rodgers. So those days are kind of gone. You're just throwing these guys right in. And I think maybe that's why some of these young guys aren't really getting an opportunity to develop, because they're just thrown in, and after 6 months, the GM is like, okay, my job's on the line next, and you point to the kid at quarterback. So again, you kind of look at Tua. He's not going to have time to develop. They're already talking about getting rid of him. Again, I'm not sold on him, but it's somebody that you need time. You need to develop and improve.
Yeah. Speaking of Miami, you got Fitzpatrick, who was there last year as the hybrid backup / starter. He's a free agent. He hasn't announced that he's retiring anything yet, so I assume he's going to play another year. If you were Miami, would you bring him back, or is that distraction with Tua and all the replacing? Would you commit to him and kind of let Fitzpatrick go somewhere else?
If I was running that team, to me, he's the perfect fit. And the reason why he's the perfect fit is because A, he's liked in the room.
Mm-hmm.
B, he knows himself that he's not the future. He seems to be like a supportive teammate. He knows the playbook, and he played pretty darn good last year. There was a start, I don't know, it was week 6 or week 7 that I was shocked that he wasn't starting. He had 1, 2, or 3 in a row, and then throwing 2 in, and that didn't go as well. So if I was Miami, I think if Fitzy was willing to come and be kind of that mentor again and kind of do that role, I think I would definitely. I think he's as good as you're going to get Mitch Trubisky or whoever you're going to pick up on the Jameis Winston on the free agent market. So I wouldn't hesitate to do it, really. Just as long as you don't blindside him again. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't bring him back.
No.
No. If you drafted Tua 5th overall, if he's your long-term quarterback, you got to take the training wheels off. If it's a veteran that they bring in behind him, I think it's fine, but I don't think it can be Fitzpatrick again, because the guys are always going to look at him on the sideline. Cameras, the coach, he knows Fitzpatrick. And I think you got to give Tua the runway to finish games, even if he loses them. If he's the answer long-term to say, okay, you took a lump here, you took a loss, there's no Fitzpatrick. It's on you. Go win or lose this game for us, and it'll help you out in the long run. I just think Fitzpatrick's a distraction from day one, and as a team, you want to eliminate distractions.
Okay, if you're Tua Tagovailoa and Ryan Fitzpatrick is your threat on the bench and you can't overcome that, you're not going to be a starter.
I don't think it's him. I think it's the coach.
Well, it doesn't matter. If you're Tua, if that's my competition and I can't excel and take the job from Ryan Fitzpatrick, then really you're not a franchise quarterback. If that was an Aaron Rodgers sitting there on the bench, that might be a different question, or a Tom Brady next year behind you. But I mean, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, for God's sakes. I don't think it's that much of a distraction. If I'm the coach, if Tua, you can't get it done, yeah, I'll put Ryan Fitzpatrick in. That's being in the NFL. You look at these, you can't give them so much runway that they can just have no pressure at all. I don't know. To me, it's not a big threat, Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I just think you got to let a quarterback close a game, which Miami didn't do last year. They'd always put Fitzpatrick in. I don't think that's the right move. I think if you got a guy that Miami does not know if he's a franchise quarterback, and half of that reason is because they didn't let Tua finish games. You're down 7 with 6 minutes to go. Let him finish the game. Don't put Fitzpatrick in, because you don't know what he's like in these big situations, because he's on the bench. I get it. You play to win, but at the same time, Fitzpatrick's 80 years old. He's going to be done here in 5 minutes. He's booking a ticket to the retirement home. He's not let your future. If he is your future, let him show it, whether he is or he isn't.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe that's more of a coaching issue than the actual.
That's my point. Yeah, I thought it was a coaching.
Maybe or a franchise kind of issue there that they do. I agree that they do have to let him spread his wings, but it's also I don't see Ryan Fitzpatrick as a threat. But yeah,
no.
I would say take this year, see what Tua is. I think I have a good idea, I think, of what he is. I don't think he's what they want or need. I think he's too small. He's already injury prone. But I agree. Let's see him for 8 games. If they're 1-8 or 1-7, okay, yeah, well, Fitzy, go back and let's see if we can. I don't think it'll take long to see what he is. But you also got to understand they're young too. You have a Kyler Murray who started the first 8 games, looked like an MVP, and then he just fell off the map too.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I do agree. You have to have a look at him for sure. And I think this year is the year to do it. while you're on the rise, so that you can make
Yeah.
a decision one way or the other.
Yeah. And
But I thought you were scared of Fitzy and the beard. That's all
no,
I.
no, no, no. If you're a player and you're afraid of him, yeah, you got bigger problems. You shouldn't be playing football. Uh, Before we wrap up today, let's talk about a couple other guys. Top picks that are free agents. You got Jameis Winston, who maybe could go back to New Orleans. Went there 1 year deal. Drew Brees still hasn't retired, which is interesting to me. He's had about 2 months to do it, and he still hasn't with free agency starting. So he's still available. Jameis Winston, obviously available. You got obviously Mitch Trubisky, who the Bears announced today they're going to let him get to free agency. I think they're going to go in a different direction. So either guy intrigue you more, Mitsubishi Mitch or Jameis?
Really, neither. If I had to pick
Yeah.
one of the two, I'd take Winston. Trubisky, oh, MVP Mitch there. I'm not a big fan. I think Chicago's finally coming. They should have come to the realization. It's kind of like the Tua issue. Like, that franchise knew for the last 2 years that Mitch was not the quarterback, but they continued to be in denial, wasted 2 years of not being objective and admitting you made a mistake, and it cost them. In terms of those two, I would say Jameis is probably your best bet. The quarterbacks that I'm interested in more than those two are Darnold, easy
Mhm.
staying, easy going, and I'd like to know what's happening with Garoppolo. Do you know anything on those fronts?
San Francisco said that they're keeping Garoppolo, but I don't believe a word an executive says this time of year. So grain of salt there. Darnold, I think Darnold likely will be traded because I think the Jets will take Zach Wilson at number 2 in the draft. So I could see Sam Darnold being moved to a team. I'll be interested to see where, because it would have to be, if they don't trade down, say the Jets keep their pick at number 2, they'd have to trade Darnold to a team for assets. So could San Francisco be that team? And then you see San Francisco flip Garoppolo to New England. That could be a potential shuffle. But I don't think we know how good Sam Darnold is, and he's had Adam Gase and his black cloud of despair put under him for his whole career. So I think he's a guy that's still a virtual unknown. It'd be interesting to see what he can do without Adam Gase, and being away from the Jets seems to help a lot of players too.
Where was Gase before the Jets again?
Miami with Tannehill, and look
Oh,
how
yeah, there you
Tannehill
go.
looks
Yeah,
now.
that was it.
The
So yeah,
one
Gase
good player Adam Gase has looked good with has been Peyton Manning, but Peyton Manning is
coaches himself.
yeah yeah
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say Sam Darnold, to me, he's an enigma. I don't know what he is. I mean,
Mm,
you look at him, he looks really good in terms of his frame, his size. He's the ideal quarterback. He might be a fit in New Orleans.
could be.
He
Mhm.
wouldn't be a bad fit. I don't know. I think it's kind of like the Russell Wilson. Once you give you your list of 5 teams, I think Sam Darnold's been traded 10 times already,
Right.
so to speak. It's just a matter of when he's gone. I don't know what, like you said, I think they're going to draft and then kind of move on from him. He's the type of guy that, as a GM, I'd be really scared that he'd come back to haunt me
Me
in
too.
terms of his ability. And once, like you said, Gase is out of the way, which essentially he's just a dark cloud that, he behooves talent more than he supports it. So yeah, I don't know. New Orleans might be a fit. Maybe he'll start with the Jets, but I don't feel like Darnold has really been given
A chance.
their opportunity to
Yeah,
show.
and Darnold could also end up in Houston if Houston decides to trade Deshaun Watson. The Jets are on Deshaun's board. He's got a full no trade, so I assume Darnold would be in that deal. Obviously, Houston would need a quarterback for next season. That would be terrible for him to go from the Jets to Houston in his 2 spots in the NFL, but that's another potential road for him, leaving New York.
I was thinking about the Houston situation too. If I was running that team, and again, it's easy to say, sitting armchair quarterback here,
Hmm.
but I would sit Watson. I'd say no. I'd let him hold out for the year if he's not going to play. Is there like he's
He said he's not going to play.
Yeah, I would sit him out. And
Hmm.
really, it's a disaster right now
Yep.
anyway. Everybody's leaving, everybody's wanting out. If you're not going to get, which I don't think Houston will get, value for Watson, because I think everybody knows kind of the predicament they're in, I would say, okay, sit out. take the year, do your thing, and we'll just keep rolling. Because I mean, with Watson, what were they,
4-12,
4-12? So okay, you're two and you're
two and
whatever, you're
14.
14 this year. What difference does it make? I think until a GM does that, it's going to continue. And again, I have no problem with players earning their due and all those things too. But I also think that the owners need to, I don't know, it's happening a lot. The players are just kind of picking where they go, sitting out when they want, and kind of
Right.
dictating terms as the employee, there's a lot of complications there too with the type of work it is and how dangerous it is. I understand that. But
Right.
I think it would be a good thing for Houston to do as a franchise, almost to kind of reiterate that, all right, we're starting over. Watson, you sit if you want. We're moving forward until we get a deal that we really like. You're going to sit on the sidelines. And I don't think they would have to pay him, if I'm not mistaken, if he chose not to play.
No, you don't have to pay him.
So
He would actually get fined.
yeah, I wouldn't pay him. Go ahead, Deshaun, and then sit out. And then what you also do, I think, as a franchise, is it shows the rest of the league that you're willing to sit on him until you get the deal that you want. I think what's going to happen is they're going to get rid of him they won't get what Detroit got in a long shot.
I think they will.
You think so?
Yep.
They're
He's a top 5 quarterback in the game.
He is. I'm not discrediting his talent, but I'm just saying that every team in the league knows that
Right.
Houston are a lame duck sitting there.
Right.
So people will be nickel and diming them as much as they can. So if I was GM, that's what I'd do. Sends a message, kind of reshapes your franchise, which has been a joke.
Right.
And you'd say the new regime starts here. Deshaun, okay, you're not reporting to camp. Listen, the emblem on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. And you kind of you start the new era in Houston with a little bit of dignity and respect, which that franchise has been
devoid of.
So, anyway, just a side note.
No, definitely interesting. I've heard that said in the media too, that they should be looking at doing that. But yeah, if I had to guess, I think they'll trade him before the draft because they'll want to get draft picks so that they can use it obviously in the draft in late April. But it's been pretty quiet for like a month now on the Deshaun Watson front. So maybe they just say, like you said, they go into camp and say, show up because we're going to find you day after day and it's not going to be worth your time. But it's such a tough tightrope because, they gave him the money, but then they kind of lied to him. And I think it shows just how bad Houston is as an organization, that you have a quarterback that you really like who wanted to stay there. And then he wants to leave. I mean, it shows really bad moral character on the Houston Texans brand as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I'm not by any means defending what Houston has done here over the last year and a half, 2 years, really. But I'm also saying it's maybe as a franchise an opportunity to have a reset. Right. They're divorced now. They're still together. They're still living in the same house.
But
Watson and the Texans are divorced, and it's just a matter of who's gonna pack up the bags first and get out.
Yeah. No. Obviously, free agency starts Tuesday. Still a lot to be talked about with the draft and with the quarterback movement. I mean, it's been one of the crazier off seasons to date in a long time. But, Adam, I know you got the kids and everything going on. Now that we're back in yellow, we can do more stuff. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to me today. And as always, it's always a pleasure to have you on. So thank you for joining me.
Hey, anytime, Noah. I love talking football. So I'm glad that I can help you out. Love doing it.
Perfect. Well, everybody, I'll be back tomorrow. Talk about the weekend in sports. Interesting weekend at the Players down in Jacksonville with Lee Westwood and Bryson DeChambeau in the final group last weekend. They're in the final group today, so you don't see that often. Talk about a lot, including the Jets beating the Maple Leafs last night and a bunch of other things. So join me tomorrow morning. Until then, stay safe, and we'll talk soon.